Nobody warns you about this part of life. Not really. People tell you change is necessary. Tell you it builds character, makes you stronger. But they don't tell you how uncomfortable it can feel. And you definitely feel it. Standing in the middle of your own life one day, realizing it don't fit you anymore. It can feel like standing barefoot on shifting ground, trying to keep your balance while everything underneath you moves. And I think that's the part that shakes people. Not the loud changes. Not always. Sometimes it's quiet. It walks in slowly. You just wake up one morning, and the things you tolerated for years suddenly feel heavy. Like something inside of you can't keep living the way it always has. Conversations feel different. Certain rooms drain you. Some relationships start feeling one-sided. And you can't unfeel it once you notice it. Yeah. Funny thing about change, though, your mind can understand it long before your heart catches up. And that gap right there, that's where people suffer. I'll admit, the older I get, the harder change gets. Because sometimes when you're young, you think change means adventure. But when you're older, real change can feel like hell. Sometimes it means losing things like people or versions of yourself. Maybe it's hearing an old song and missing that part of yourself that ain't coming back. And honestly, some changes feel like betrayal to the person you used to be, especially if that version of you survived hard things. You start setting boundaries, and you feel guilty for it. You stop over-explaining yourself, and suddenly there's nothing to talk about. You start resting instead of overworking, and your mind tells you you're being lazy. And it feels wrong at first. Not because it is wrong, but because there's a fight that is still happening inside of you. Part of you wants to change, while another part is terrified of what you'll lose if you actually become different. And that's something people don't say enough. Yeah, change exposes things, alright. That's the strange thing about change, though. People talk about it like it's beautiful. And I suppose that sometimes it is. But other times, well, it feels like sitting alone in your driveway at night wondering why the life you built suddenly feels unfamiliar. And nobody really talks about that part, do they? The in-between stage, that place where you are no longer the old you, but not fully the new you yet either. And that stage will mess with your head if you let it. You question yourself constantly, wondering if you're healing or just falling apart. You make progress and then suddenly you feel like you've gone backward. And truthfully, I reckon that sometimes it looks like both at the same time. No one talks about the exhaustion and frustration that can sometimes come with change. Maybe change is messy. Maybe healing ain't this clean upward climb everybody talks about or imagines. Maybe sometimes growth looks like catching yourself before reacting. Maybe it looks like finally resting without apologizing for it. Maybe it's learning to stop abandoning yourself just to keep peace. Little things, quiet things, but they change you. And eventually, after enough hard conversations with yourself, enough lonely nights, enough moments where you barely recognize yourself anymore, something shifts. And the funny thing is, while you're mourning everything that's leaving, you don't always notice what's arriving. A little more peace, a little more honesty, a little less need to prove yourself to everybody. You realize change was never about becoming somebody else. Not really. It was about meeting the version of you that got buried underneath all of the mess. And I reckon that's why change feels so emotional sometimes. And maybe that's what nobody tells you. The ground never really stopped moving. You just finally stopped fighting it. And somewhere along the way, you learned how to keep your balance. Not because life got steady, but because you did. Because deep down, you ain't just changing your life. You're trying to find your way back to yourself. After years of being who you thought you had to be.